Well, welcome back, folks, to Activate Worcester. I'm Sandy Williamson, filling in for Ron Mata, our normal host. He's still stuck in the snow somewhere here in Worcester.
We're going to send out a search party if he doesn't show up soon.
So we'll do our best without Ron, and I'm sure we'll catch up with him later. Meanwhile, we're back for a second show with a good friend of ours, Mike Yacino, and without further ado, I'll pass the show over to Chris Pinto and get going with Mike on some interesting things that he promotes today here in the Worcester and Massachusetts area.
So, folks, if you recall from our last show, which we hope you watched, we went over Mike's activism in the past in protecting our gun rights. But anyone who is an active sport shooter, skeet trap, or a hunter in Central Mass area understands one very important thing is that if we want to protect our sport for the future, then we have to do so by getting our children involved. We have to pass down this great tradition that is a truly American tradition, the shooting sports, because we do have the right to own firearms in the United States, which is unique to our country. We have to make sure that we pass it down to our children. And Mike has a glorious past in protecting our rights to that ownership, but he is also currently involved in the future of passing that tradition down to our kids. So Mike, we can't be any more thankful to a guy like you protecting us in the past and doing work to keep things going into the future. So please tell us about what you're involved in with the kids to protect our tradition.
Chris, originally when I incorporated the Goal Foundation in 1990, its mission was to expand junior shooting programs, expand the education and training programs, try to do more in the rod and gun clubs, get programs into the school systems that we used to have. There are a number of schools in Massachusetts that have ranges. For instance, New Bedford High School has a beautiful range inside the school complex. There's a ROTC program down there run by Colonel McGovern, Kevin McGovern, old friend of mine. And there are other schools. Bedford High School also has a range in their school. So we wanted to try to help wherever we could. By creating the foundation, it gave me an opportunity to raise money from people who didn't want to give it to a political organization. They wanted to be able to write their donation off. The foundation changed its name this year due to some unpleasant circumstances that took place in the state. Our board of directors chose to change the name to the Massachusetts Shooters Foundation. The mission is exactly the same. The people who are involved in the organization are exactly the same. The board of directors has actually expanded. We are getting a good deal more support from the business community than we did before. But the mission is still exactly what we set out to have it be. Training programs, developing and expanding our junior programs, not only in the rod and gun clubs, but statewide, competitions, more competition statewide, creating an opportunity for the young athletes who shoot to mingle with other people like them that they might not get the opportunity to. We're sponsoring more competitions where we bring clubs from across the state together. In the early days, the early stages of what we were doing, there'd be pockets around the state, and the clubs, if they stayed within 20 miles of each other, that was okay. We now have created a list of competitions where they travel from all across the state, and indeed from other states, to come in to compete at the level that we work with young people. The foundation also sponsors the junior athlete who has excelled in whatever particular discipline they've chosen, whether it's air rifle, or air pistol, or standard pistol, or small bore rifle, or shotgun. And some of these young people have begun making records, which I think is rather unique. I have a picture here of 3 young ladies from Massachusetts who we've been sponsoring the last few years. They shoot down at Taunton Rifle and Pistol Club. The center photo is Sarah McLagan, who is the National Civilian Marksmanship Program's air rifle champion. And she is flanked by two ladies who happen to be second and third place to her in that competition. Interestingly enough, all three of them all shoot at the same club. And they set national records in the match that they participated in, new junior records. One of those ladies, Mackenzie Martin, just turned 16. She has 67 national records to her credit in shooting. Sarah has 7. Sonia has been winning medals at the Bay State Games. She had the bronze and the silver medal in air rifle and small bore rifle. I give you these because they're all junior shooters. We hear a lot about seniors who get involved in the various games, and I couldn't help but throw that one in. That's the old man with
Who's that guy in the
one
middle?
of our banquets where we recognize these young ladies. The banquet that we held to sort of acknowledge them, we recognized a variety of young people. Now we have an air rifle shooter by the name of Isabel McCauley, or an air pistol shooter. She's only 13. She went out to the Olympic Training Center and she won the gold medal in her division. She's ranked 8th amongst women in air pistol shooting in the country. She's 13 years old.
So that's independent of age group. Wow.
When you compete at the Olympic level, age doesn't really mean anything anymore. It's really your qualification. And so when they have the trials, they try to ensure that no matter how young you are, if you've gotten an invitation because of your shooting ability, that you compete with all levels, whether it's the Olympic development team, the college juniors that are shooting, or the senior shooters in the game. This picture has particular significance. Sarah, who is pictured in the others, is standing with an individual who probably most people in America have no idea who he is. It's Loans Wigger. Loans was in the military, and he is the only shooter ever inducted into the Olympic Hall of Fame. Wigger won 58 gold medals in international competition before he retired, and has literally pails of silver and bronze medals. He set 107 national and international records. Indeed, the titles that he holds just keep going on, because now he's shooting as a senior. And he's still winning championships. I asked, Wigger and I sat on the NRA board. I was on the NRA board for 13 years back in the 80s and 90s, and we sat alphabetically. So Yacino was next to Wigger. So Wigger and I got to be good friends. We're in the back of the bus talking all the time. And he into competitions, me in the political aspect of things. I didn't understand anything about competitions back in the early 80s, but I certainly knew a little bit about politics. So we swapped ideas back and forth and got to be very good friends. And he came to our banquet to present all of the awards that we gave out to these young people. The Rod and Gun Clubs have the property, have the facilities, have the ranges, and for the most part, have the instructors. They have coaches. Now the problem was we need to get them to kids. So we started running programs through the foundation where we put material out in the schools and invited anybody from the areas to go to certain clubs that we had handpicked and get this program up and running from the bottom up.
I got to ask you a question about that, Mike. Because in the schools, you could put information out in the schools, in the cities or the towns?
Well, mostly it's in the rural communities.
Yes.
Once you get it out there, you don't have to do it to every school. Once you get it out there in areas, and we tried to do it by county, we got it into several schools within a county system. Word gets out, it moves pretty fast.
Yeah.
There are some clubs, like where Sarah and her friends shoot at Taunton. Taunton does not require that the youngster who comes to them be a son or a daughter of a member. It could be anybody in the community. They have an excellent program down there. Indeed, they supply the guns, the ammunition, the ear protection, the eye protection, everything that a young person needs to get involved in this sport. And their coaches, Kevin Winters, who is a coach down there, a very good friend of mine, is an exceptional coach. And the instructors, all been trained, all certified in the disciplines that they teach. More and more, we've been able, over the years, to raise money and then provide it to the clubs to buy this equipment. Because sometimes a rod and gun club might have a whole bunch of volunteers and they're ready to do their thing, they got the property. They don't have an awful lot of money in the bank. So we've tried to seed them by buying products in bulk, buy guns 10 at a time, buy ammunition by the cases, and then be able to give it to them at a much reduced rate by doing that. So again, we tried to act as the catalyst for all of this. We try to be the coordinator for all of that. Now, what needs to be noted is that a lot of these young athletes don't just compete in NRA competitions like it was 20 or 30 years ago. Now you have a new governing body for the Olympics. The NRA no longer has that designation. It's USA Shooting. So USA Shooting has matches and trials for people who want to go to the Olympics. The NRA has trials. The civilian marksmanship has trials. So all of these major competitions need to have the youngsters, not only from Massachusetts, but every other state, participate in them so they get noticed. There are 220 colleges and universities in this country that actually offer scholarships for shooting.
Really?
Some full scholarships. Old Miss, Tennessee Martin, Nebraska, Alaska, Fairbanks, University of Alaska Fairbanks. You have a number of schools, Kentucky, a number of schools that provide the scholarships, whether they're half or full scholarships. So these young people want those coaches to see them. Well, that means they've got to go to these national competitions. For each junior, it's approximately $1,000 every time they go. You've got air flights, you've got to put them up someplace, you've got to feed them, you've got ammunition, you've got the fees that they have to pay, the equipment that they have to have. You may remember in your younger days a company called Daisy.
Oh, yeah.
BB guns, or Crossman air guns. You're not going to go very far with them anymore. That $25 little gun isn't going to get you too far.
They don't shoot very straight.
They don't shoot very straight. I bought Sarah a new air rifle in December of 2010. And it took her a year and a half to win that championship. But that $3,500 that I spent on that single-shot pellet rifle was worth it when you see her wearing that medal around her neck.
Yep.
The rifles that they shoot, somewhere in the neighborhood of $5,000 to $7,000 for a single-shot .22 rifle. In order to be at the level and of the composure that a young person needs in order to do what they got to do.
And it has to have a custom length of pull.
All kinds of bells and whistles.
Bull barrel and...
All kinds of bells and whistles.
Yeah.
And mostly, they're a lot heavier than your standard .22 single-shot rifle.
Okay.
Because in the competitions that are held outdoors, wind is a factor. You'll see a young person who weighs about 85 pounds standing out there with a 12-pound gun in her hand.
Wow.
Because it's the only thing that can steady her in the wind. The discipline, the training, the focus. I coached small bore and air rifle for a number of years. Have kind of backed off a little bit of that lately, but I used to teach my athletes to focus on the front sight. You want that sight clear and sharp in your mind. The target will appear slightly as a blur. The back sight's a little bit of a blur, but that front sight's got to be a clear, distinct image to you. You'll catch the importance of that in a second. Focus in shooting requires the discipline of blanking your mind out from everything else. I teach my shooters, if you can do that with a rifle, if you can do that with a pistol, you can focus all your attention on that front sight. And when you're in school, if you've got a teacher you're not particularly fond of, you can focus the teacher out, but you can gather from what they're trying to provide as a learning experience to you the information you need to get better educated. Or later in life when you get a job, and you got somebody on the job that's a real pain to you, you can learn to focus them out and pay your attention to the job at hand, to the work that you're assigned to do, that sort of a thing. Discipline yourself to have that self-control. In the shooting sports, we don't have the kind of violence that you see in other sports. And so it has to be more controlled. There's no hype. If you're hyped up, you're not going to hit anything. Picture that, I used to use this term, and some of the older generation knows it better. I used to say to my kids, you're taking a saccharin tablet-sized projectile, and they'd look at me and think, what the devil is a saccharin tablet? You're taking the bullet itself, and you're putting it inside itself every single time you squeeze the trigger. Well, think about baseball. You got a big bat, you got a ball, you got a field that's hundreds of yards wide, hundreds of yards deep. All you got to do is put the ball out there. There's only 9 people out there. It's a simple thing. It isn't a simple thing. If you had to put that baseball in the same spot every single time, you hit it. Always. And every time you swung the bat, you had to hit the ball in that same spot every time. That's what a shooting athlete does. They're a true athlete in my mind. And because of the discipline that they learn, they're good not only in competitions, but they help other people. They're prone to helping the other athletes that are with them. It's not a matter of, when I show you the picture of those 3 ladies, 1, 2, and 3, they all help each other. They all kibitz with one another. They watch each other's position to see if there's some little something they could give them for advice to tweak that position, make it just a little bit better.
They're mechanics, you mean?
Well, they have to be.
Yep.
They have to be.
Well, these kids all look like they're pretty physically fit too, so it's...
And you kind of have to do that too.
So it's the whole person.
It's the whole person. And of course, they also need to have a good education because most of the colleges aren't going to take you if all you can do is shoot. So it's a combination of things. You discipline yourself in the shooting sports, you discipline yourself in getting a good education so that you've got a good future. We've been fortunate. There have been a number of young people from Massachusetts who've gone on to great things in the Olympics. Sarah Scherer, who was from the Woburn area, went to the Olympics in London this past summer. And although she came in 7th, it was only because the day before she was to compete, she fell and broke her shoulder. She decided to shoot. She competed in .22 rifle with a broken shoulder and came in 7th in the world.
That takes some focus.
That takes some focus. That's what we teach in the shooting sports. Fine young lady going to Texas Christian down in Texas. There have been others. We've fielded a number of young shooters from this state who've gone on to great things in all those disciplines, whether it's air pistol or air rifle, whatever the case may be. The progress that we've made in an atmosphere like Massachusetts is uncanny. We continue to raise money. We continue to run our training programs. We continue to do our education programs. We continue to see young people coming to us for help. We continue to see them successful. There's no shortage of kids out there that want to learn how to safely use firearms. And the foundation's ready to help them. We accept donations. We are a tax-exempt entity. We are a nonprofit, tax-exempt 501c3 under the IRS code. Any contributions to the Mass Shooters Foundation is fully tax deductible under the law. Our address is on the screen for you. They can drop us a note. We'd be happy to give them a little bit more information on what we do. I think that, I don't know how much time we got left, but
We've got about 9-10 minutes left.
9-10 minutes. I think one of the neat things here is that this is a sport when, for instance, with Sonia, I said to her one day, she's, you said it, Tandy, she's a whole person. Sonia has a 3rd-degree black belt in karate. She's 18 years old, right? She has a 3rd-degree black belt in karate. She's a prolific writer and reader. She works with her father in a photography studio, yet she shoots 2 different disciplines, air rifle and small bore rifle. She's a phenomenal kid.
This sounds like a kid that could get nominated to the Service Academy too, if they're interested.
Yeah, that's true. All of them have gone to West Point, incidentally, and competed there. Mackenzie came in top dog at West Point in this past spring. In March, she went out. Everybody was just looking at this cute little blonde girl, wondering what she was going to do. And when the dust settled, she was on top by 15 points above all the others that shot at that match. We're fielding the kind of young people who then I use as mentors for others. Ahead of this show, we will be running some clinics in various clubs in the state for junior small bore and air rifle shooters. And I take these girls and I bring them to a rod and gun club with a whole bunch of kids, 13, 14, 15, 16 years old, and I let them mentor those young people. We'll teach them the basics, but then I let the shooters get down on the floor and watch their positions to try to help them to get steadier with their rifle, to understand the discipline of what they've got to do, to focus a little bit stronger on their targets and on their front sight. It's that kind of a level of work that helps them later when they move on to college, or if they're lucky enough, like Sarah Scherer, to get to the Olympics.
So, Mike, there's an interesting side effect of this, and a story I could tell. People in Worcester know that I've worked the polls. In one particular election, I was working the polls. I had a very slow day. It was a municipal election. There wasn't much going on in the polls. I had my laptop computer there, and I showed some of the local neighbor-to-neighbor ladies a picture of my daughter and her friend who participated in a youth hunt at the club I belonged to, and a picture of them holding up a couple of dead birds, big smiles on their face. And the woman reacted and said, "What are those?" I said, "Well, they're dead pheasant." "Well, who shot them?" "Well, my daughter and her friend." "How old are they?" "Well, they're 13, 14, the two of them." "You let children play with guns?" And sort of a lot of people in the bigger cities think that guns are a bad thing. And you've had a lot of effect on these young shooters' parents. Could you talk a bit about that and that benefit? Because it's an interesting dynamic that I see going on with people I've interacted with.
So now you see in the political arena a bill that's filed that's going to ban something, or ban shooting or something that's negative.
Assault weapons.
Okay, whatever it is. And one of these young people goes back to the parents who may or may not have any interest in guns. In fact, a lot of the young people we get at the clubs come from parents that have never had any interest in guns. That's why they come to us to learn. Well, now the process is going to work up. That young person is going to go home and say, wait a minute, there's a bill that's going to prevent me from doing what I enjoy doing. I'm not harming anybody. I might be costing you a little bit of money for some of these fancy guns you might be, but I'm not harming anybody.
Yeah.
I want you to fight that. That's a better approach than trying to convince the parents in the first place who have no interest and have no connection. Now they have a connection. They have a young person who's successful at doing something. Maybe they can't play basketball or baseball or hockey, or maybe they're not talented enough, they're not physical enough to do those. Anybody can be in the shooting sports. We have handicapped shooters. We have people in wheelchairs. We've got all kinds of individuals. If you can compete with yourself, if you've got some mobility, you can shoot. And you can be proud of yourself for accomplishing things. That's what the shooting sports gives to us.
And what about laterally? I mean, I know in my particular case, I had friends in high school that were hunters, and they got me interested. You see some of that going on with your programs as well? Like
Absolutely.
These girls bring their friends
Absolutely.
and educate them?
Absolutely. When I speak with, Sarah's homeschooled, so it's a little bit different situation. But others on her team go to the public schools, and they pass on the fact that they've been successful at what they do. They're part of a team. They're part of a group of people that does this collectively and together, and they get recognition for what they've done. That doesn't mean that everybody's going to want to do it. It just doesn't always fit. But certainly they're a lot better influencing those young people than you and I would be. Sarah hunted with me this past fall and harvested her first 2 deer. She'd never hunted in her life. And I felt that because she was such a good shot, she wasn't going to have any trouble doing what she was doing, but it was more, could she harvest the animal? Well,
Did you teach her the whole process?
I taught her everything. In fact, when we got back home, I taught her how to cut it up. I had the deer, and I had her cut the deer up, cut the different meat cuts off the back strap.
And she field dressed it as well?
Absolutely. You need to teach them the whole thing.
Yeah.
Otherwise, there's no real appreciation. They like to eat the meat,
Oh, I know.
but they didn't want to do the work. I said, oh, no.
I got a daughter that says, I'll shoot them
Yeah,
and I'll eat them.
Yeah.
You do everything else in between, Dad.
can't do that. You got to teach them all of it. Kind of like shooting the guns. They like to shoot the gun. They don't want to clean
yeah.
it. Oh, we're going to teach you how to clean the gun, too. You're going to get an all-round education when you come to us.
Awesome. So we got a couple minutes left here. I know that our camera over there is a little bit far away for them to be able to read the address. But again, Mike's running a 501c3 charitable organization. Your donations to the Mass Shooters Foundation are tax deductible.
Yep.
It's an educational institution that will help continue the great American tradition. And they're at massshootersfoundation.org. And his phone number is 508-393-5133. And they're at 37 Pierce Street, right down the street here in Northborough, Mass. It's Northborough, Mass. 01532, and it's P.O. Box 306. Mike, we got about a minute and a half left. Let's wrap it up and let's see if we can get some people off this show to get involved.
I think the young people have excelled, and they've done so because of their training, and they're going to carry the message on, and hopefully, in the future, the politics will get easier for us.
Yep.
It's their country. They're coming into a difficult time. The next 4 years are going to be tough on real Americans. And these young people are not only going to have to pay the price for the mistakes that were made in November, but they're going to have to carry the water politically. I wish them luck.
And I know that our good friend Ron that's missing always says, the left always says, we're doing what we do because it's for the dear sweet children.
Really?
Well, folks, carrying on this tradition is for the dear sweet children, and we hope you'll help Mike out.
Well,
Thank you very much.
thank you, Mike.
Thank you for having you on, for having on our show. It's great.